Hi everyone, Angela here. In this video, I show you how I sew these handy bowl cozies out of a cotton tea towel. It's a great way to match your kitchen linen. Now I do a few extra steps for a neater finish and less bulk. You'll need 100% cotton tea towels or fabric of your choice. Cotton batting, I'm using 1/16 loft without scrim. Cotton thread, a grid ruler and a small quilting template, a measuring tape, a rotary cutter, a utility knife, my favorite Kai scissors, thread snippers, a vanishing marking pen, pins and fabric clips, craft paper, a black marker or Sharpie. You can find links for all the tools I use in the description below. First, you'll need to measure from the top edge of your bowl around the bottom to the other edge. Mine has a little bit of a lip, so I'm just going to measure from the center of the lip to the other side. I'm measuring this at 10 inches. So for the pattern pieces, I need 10-inch squares with 1/2 inch seam allowance all around, so I'll be cutting two 11-inch squares. Fold each piece in half and make a crease in the center. Open up the paper, turn it around, fold in half again, make another crease, and open up flat again. Place your bowl right in the center. You can check this by lifting up the sides of the paper and checking they're even on each side. Gently grab the creases on opposite sides and pinch the paper until it's wrapped snugly around the top edge of the bowl. Then carefully push all the excess paper to one side into a dart and crease it down to a point at the bottom. This will give us the dart pattern and stitch line. Just fold the paper in half again and press that crease a bit more. Now I'm just going to mark the line so that you can see it. It roughly measures about 1.25 inches across the top and about 3 inches down along the fold. Fold your paper into quarters, lining up the folds on the side, and then use scissors or a ruler and utility knife and cut right along that crease. Now flip your paper over, and we have to do the same thing for the other side. Lift the corner that you just cut, lining up the top and side edges, and then trace along that angle. And then cut off those corners as well. Now draw a line from the top point to the center point. Then mark about 1.25 inches down from the top point. Then I'm just going to use the edge of a different bowl to draw a nice smooth curve from that mark to each side of the pattern. And then cut along that curve. Take the other pattern piece that was folded into quarters, trace out that top curve, and then cut it out. Now open it up flat, fold it on the diagonal, and make a nice crease right in the center. Open it up again, fold it the other way, and make another crease. Now you have a pattern for the bowl cozy and also for the dart placement. If you're going to make a lot of these, I would transfer these patterns onto a thicker cardboard. Fold your tea towel lengthwise in half. Place your pattern down on the part of the fabric that you want to cut out. Place a pin or a weight in the center and then cut your fabric out. I'm mainly using my rotary cutter, but you can pin all around the pattern and use your scissors to cut it out. Flip your fabric over so the right sides are facing up. Place your main pattern piece right on top, fold along the diagonal, and use your vanishing ink pen to mark the 2 diagonal lines on both of the fabric pieces. We need 2 pieces of batting. Place your pattern piece down, pin or place a weight on it, and then cut out squares that are slightly bigger. Separate your batting, center your fabric pieces on top, right sides up with the markings showing. Then pin or clip all around if you need to. Next, we need to attach the fabric to the batting. We'll be stitching all around 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter from the edge of the fabric. We can't follow the lines on the machine because we cut the batting bigger and we're not following the edge of the batting. If you're using a domestic machine, from the needle to the edge of the foot is 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter, so you can just use the edge of the foot as a guide. Sew both pieces all around. When you get to the curves, have your needle down and lift your presser foot, move your fabric a little bit, sew a few more stitches, lift your foot again, move your fabric, sew a few more stitches, and continue like this around the curves. Just make sure you're maintaining the same distance from the edge. Now we need to trim the batting from both pieces. Use one hand to flip the edge of the fabric and the other hand to cut the batting. Cut nice and close to the stitching, but be really careful not to cut any of the fabric. When it's all trimmed, it should look like this on the back. Next, we need to stitch down on the 2 diagonal lines on both pieces. Depending on the batting that you're using and the machine that you have, you may need to use a walking foot. With batting side up, center the dart pattern on top and pin in place if you need to. Then mark out all the darts onto the batting. Next, we need to stitch all the darts. Fold your fabric in half, matching the rounded corners with right sides together. We'll be stitching right on the mark, so when this fabric is folded, there's quite a bit of thickness, so you have to make sure there won't be any pleating, so make sure it's nice and flat in between. When we sew our darts, we have to take a look at where that stitch line is at the top. We're going to start by back tacking below the stitch line, and we're not going to stitch any of the fabric above the stitch line. Back tack below the stitch line, stitch right along your mark, continue stitching running off the fabric. You want to leave about a good half-inch tail of thread. You don't need to back tack at the end of a dart. There's no stress on the bottom, so it's not going to come undone. Flip your fabric over and then stitch the dart on the opposite side. Repeat for the rest of the darts. These bowl cozies make really great gifts, and they pair up nicely with kitchen boa scarves as well. You can also find a tutorial for those on my channel. Once you're finished sewing, there should be a little opening at the top of each dart. Now trim off all the darts, leaving a 1/4 inch or 6 mm seam allowance. To press all the darts open, flip the bowl cozy to the inside. Spread the seam allowance and then press flat with your iron as far as you can. Put the point of the iron on the point of the dart, pull on your bowl cozy and press flat. It should be nice and flat on the right side. Then repeat for all the other darts on both pieces. Flip one of the pieces over so the right side of the fabric is on the inside. Match your patterns if you need to, and then stack it with right sides together, matching the darts and the rounded corners. With everything matched up, we'd need to put in a couple of pins. The first one about 1/2 inch to the right of the dart, and then on the other side, about right here before the curve starts. The space between the pins will be the opening where we pull it through. The reason why I don't put the pin on this side of the dart is because that opening would be too small to try to pull everything through. Now pin or clip all around if you need to. Just remember where the opening needs to be. To join the two pieces together, we'll be stitching with a 1/2 inch seam allowance this time, slightly wider than the first row of stitching. This way, when we turn it over, that first row of stitching won't show. Start by back tacking at the first pin and then continue sewing right beside that first row of stitching. Don't worry too much if you make your seam allowances just a little bit bigger. Back tack when you get to the last pin. Remove the pins, and next we need to trim down all the curves. Don't trim any fabric near the opening. Trim about half the seam allowance from all the curves. To turn this right side out, put both your thumbs through the opening and gather up all the fabric till you get to the other end. Pull the end out and then just slowly push the rest of the fabric through. Once you have all the fabric pushed through, go back in with your fingers and then just try to push out all of the seam allowances so it's nice and neat. At the opening, carefully turn in the ½ seam allowance on both sides and pin in place. Make sure the dart seams are open and flat when you're turning in the opening. And adjust the seams around the curves so that they're nice and neat. You could hand stitch the opening closed by doing a slip stitch, but I'm just going to finish it by sewing a top stitch all around the top edge. We'll sew slightly less than 1/4 inch or 5mm top stitch. The reason why I use a ½ seam allowance all around is to make sure that the opening is going to get caught through all the layers when we do this top stitch. Back tack at the start and finish of your stitch line. If you need to, use a magnetic edge guide or some tape to help with your top stitching. If you have a 1/4 inch wide foot, that also helps too. I don't recommend stitching any closer to the edge because you're not guaranteed that you're going to stitch through all the layers and it really doesn't look that nice. And there you have it, a great little bowl cozy. Use it when you're eating hot soup or having a nice big bowl of ice cream. Thanks again for watching. Take care and see you in the next video.